Guys, guess what time it is? It's cookie season. I'm Ella here, your favorite Girl Scout, and we have your oldies but goodies. Lemonades, dimmits, peanut butter sandwiches, and more. This year we have a new cookie flavor called the Explore Mug. My goal is 200 boxes, so please make that happen. You're gonna buy cookies anyway, so why not buy them from me?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for January 15th, 2026. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the podcast. And yes, it is Girl Scout season, so if you could, the link in the description should work. I know there were some issues with it last year, but I think it should be working. It was working this morning, but if you have any questions and want to buy some Girl Scout cookies, hit me up and let me know. And with that, This Day in Philly Sports History is a proud member of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network. Go to clashingconferences.com to see how you can join and get involved today. All right, so we're going to continue our autopsy, so to speak, of the Eagles 2025 season. No real news from Eagles camp yesterday. Everything was more or offensive coordinator candidates, guys that are likely. There's a lot of people being linked, and I think the Eagles would be smart to kind of turn over every rock. The two names that emerged yesterday as the Eagles reached out, apparently, were Brian Dable and Mike McDaniel. McDaniel's an interesting one just because of the conflict, or I shouldn't say conflict, contrast in styles that he would bring. It would certainly open up the offense more. Maybe it would open things up for Saquon more. And with Tank Bigsby on the roster, could see some things happening there. Dable did coach Jalen in college, but also he was also the guy that benched Jalen in the championship game. So we'll see where those two goes. There's two intriguing names. Dable obviously did work some with Josh Allen, but then couldn't really do much with Daniel Jones. So we'll see what happens. There is the Saquon connection there as well. But all that being said, we continue our autopsy. Yesterday we spoke about just how hard it is to repeat and whether or not they set themselves up for failure from the very start. Today, again, this is not about blaming. We're not blaming right now. We're just examining what went wrong and helping us understand so we don't make the same mistakes. And today, it's all about the head coach. Tough, detailed, together. You heard that if you watched the Hard Knocks. You heard that a lot. He talks about it a lot. But unfortunately, this year, the Eagles weren't any of them. They weren't tough, they weren't detailed, and they certainly weren't together. Tough, I feel that's physically and mentally. We saw them get pushed around a lot. We saw them play not to lose in the second half, get very conservative. Whether it was the Cowboys, they got helped out by the weather, almost blew it in Tampa. The Broncos game, they did. They got punched in the mouth by the Giants and the Bears and had no answer. The second Cowboys game, second half woes. The Chargers, they almost tried to do it against the Bills. It certainly did against the Commanders with the backups. I mean, you want to look, that Chiefs game was close. I'm trying to think what the other game was. The Lions and Packers games were close, so we saw it in the playoffs against San Francisco. They just were not a tough team. The O-line was bullied around. Defensively, I'll give them credit for playing tough, but offensively, they were not tough. A.J. Brown not making full efforts and making business decisions a lot of times during the season, not finishing blocks. So I think there was not really a toughness And it goes back to the lack of the sense of urgency we talked about yesterday. Detailed, I think that goes without saying. Too many stupid penalties. Like, not physical penalties, mental penalties, false starts, lining up in the wrong spot, stepping into the end zone on punt returns, being able to know down and distance things, the play calling, the drop balls, not letting a punt go over your head and go in the end zone, missed kicks, special teams, just in general. They were predictable and basic with their play calling. They were not on the same page. You saw a couple times Jalen and Devontae, Jalen and AJ not doing the runs up the middle. So there were no adjustments. So they definitely were not detailed, as Nick likes to say. And then together, almost from the very beginning, AJ Brown, all his tweets, they never really got fully addressed. He was mad and angry at somebody. He said it wasn't Kevin Petula. He said it wasn't Nick Sirianni. Said it wasn't Jalen. He and Jalen are good. So I don't know. There's rumors that it was Jalen. Jalen did not have a ringing endorsement of Kevin Petula at the end of the season. Maybe he knew. But Jalen said, "Oh, I love KP." Like, what they were saying and what reality was, they were not together. They were one block away. Why can't you get together, Jordan, and make that one block? And we heard it all the time. We heard about the execution. Well, to me, if you're not executing, that means you're not on the same page, which means you're not together. Who were the offensive leaders this year? I know Jalen leads a different way than what everybody else, but where was AJ? Didn't really see much of Saquon doing what he did last year. Maybe he was. I don't know, but we didn't see these things. So the perception is, and the reality, they weren't together. So they had no identity on offense. They were a defensive team that it took half the season almost for them to put it together. But this team just had no identity. I mentioned it yesterday or the other day. They just weren't a fun team to watch. So that falls on the head coach. They weren't tough. They weren't detailed. They weren't together. When the culture, which Nick is supposed to be a culture guy, when the culture slips, the systems follow. And then tomorrow, speaking of those systems, we will take a look at the offense and the struggles and all of that. But Kyle and I will have more on this tomorrow. The new podcast will be out either tomorrow or Friday, but we'll talk kind of more in depth what went wrong. We'll take a look at offensive coordinator candidates and what does the future hold for this team. But the Brotherly Birds breakdown will be out at some point tomorrow or early Friday. All right, sad day here. Ranger Suarez. I shouldn't say that sad. We kind of knew it was happening, but Ranger Suarez will not be on the Phillies next year. Will be going up to Boston. So wish him the best, except for if he pitches against us. Sixers to the hardwood. Not a good showing by them yesterday. 133-107. Had a horrible third quarter. They just seemed off the entire game. Something just did not seem right. They actually were booed by the home crowd. And like I said, Cleveland, to their credit, had an answer every time the Sixers made a run. I will say Joe looked better than I've seen him in a long time. Hustling, he's diving out of bounds, running back on defense, making blocks. It's good to see him test that knee out. He did go over 13,000 points, becoming the 7th player to score 13,000 points with the Sixers. Two teams will rematch on Friday at the X. Hopefully a better showing from the Sixers. Hopefully we'll see Joe play in that game. He was all over the place, so you like to see that. And that does lead to today's trivia question. Joe became the 7th Sixer to score 13,000 points with the team. Who were the other 6? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest? Want to talk about the Eagles? That's fine. Ranger Suarez, your favorite Ranger Suarez memory, whatever you got, that is all fair game. And, of course, the Discord channel, which the link is in the description. And then yesterday's trivia question, who's the Flyers' all-time leader in head coaching wins? That would be Fred Shero, who did lead them to 2 Stanley Cups. And then speaking of those Flyers, they're struggling, man. They are struggling, lost their 4th straight, losing up in Buffalo 5-2. They're starting to get a little banged up as well. The All-Star break is still about a month away, I think, or the Olympic break is coming, so they should get some rest, which will help them get healthy. They just got to get to the Olympic break. They're back at it tonight out in Pittsburgh to take on the hated Penguins. Not a good time because the Penguins are red hot right now, but hopefully they're getting, the young players are learning from this and they'll be better because of it. All right, some quick housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on all social media platforms at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. And as I mentioned, the Brotherly Birds breakdown will be out at some point tomorrow or very early Friday morning. Reppin' Philly ain't a choice. It's a way of life. PhillyGoat.com is your one-stop shop for Philly pride. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. Look fresh, stay Philly, Philly Goat. Go Birds. All right, January 15th. And first, we're going to go back to 1965. And on this day in 1965, one of the, if not the biggest blockbuster trade in NBA history happened. Certainly the biggest trade in Sixers history, when the Philadelphia Warriors, the team formerly from Philadelphia, needed to free up some salary space, trade it with the new Philly team, the Sixers. Wilt Chamberlain came to Philly in exchange for Paul Newman, not the salad dressing guy or the actor, Connie Durkering, Lee Schaefer, and $150,000 were sent out to San Francisco to the Warriors. This trade was the rare case where a trade worked out well for both teams. You don't usually see that often. The two teams would meet in the 1967 NBA Finals, which we know how that played out for the Sixers. Wilt did stay in Philly until the end of the 1968 season, but did help lead the Sixers to that title. He averaged in his 4 years in Philly, or 3.5 years, 27.6 points per game, almost 24 rebounds, and almost 7 assists. Not bad, but Wilt came home to Philly on this day after the Warriors left for San Francisco. Biggest trade probably in NBA history, or one of the biggest trades, in exchange for Paul Newman, Connie Durkering, Lee Schaefer, and $150,000. And then fast forward to 1967, and during that magical 66-67 season, Wilt brought the best out of his teammates. Didn't average the points he did with the Warriors, but he didn't need to. And on this day, he only scored 19 points, but had 25 rebounds and 5 assists. Luke Jackson was the star, 38 points, 13 rebounds. Chet Walker added 20. The Kangaroo Kid, Billy Cunningham, had 19 as the Sixers beat the Celtics 110-195 to improve to 41-4 on the season. That 66-67 team, by many, is still considered one of the greatest teams in NBA history, finishing 68-13. And then we're going to fast forward all the way up to 1996. Flyers beat the Stars 6-1 at the Coors State Center. Eric Lindros with a goal and an assist, scoring his 300th career point. John LeClair, 2 goals and an assist, his 100th career goal. He would end up with 51 that season. And then Rod Brindamore with a goal and 2 assists as well, as the Flyers beat the Stars 6-1. 2019, Sixers blew out the Minnesota Timberwolves 149-107. Joel Embiid had 31 points and 13 rebounds. Ben Simmons was 1 assist away from messing around and getting a triple-double. Jimmy Butler added 19. And man, every time I hear anything or cover anything from that team with Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, and Joe, you just have to think back to, man, what could have been. And then finally, 2024, the disaster that was known as the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles ended on this day, mercifully, I guess you could say, on Monday Night Football in the wild card game in Tampa Bay. And this game played out exactly how I think we all expected it to play. losing 32-9. Game featured a safety. It featured missed 2-point conversions, poor defense. You name it, this game had it. As Baker Mayfield carved up the defense for 337 yards, 3 touchdowns. There was no A.J. Brown in this game, who hurt his knee in the last regular season game against the Giants. Devontae Smith, though, stepped up with 8 receptions for 148 yards, but the season was mercifully over, and thank God it was, because much like this season, beginning of the season, I guess that team was fun, but then it just, during that collapse, it was just brutal. Absolutely brutal. All right, it is Thursday. That means it's time for a little Throwback Thursday, brought to you by Lotwin. Go to Lotwin.com. Get your 3D custom hype chains. Use that promo code TCCPOD to take 10% off of your order. And today we're going to look at Ben Scheib. And Ben Scheib passed away this week on January 14th in 1922. And Ben was the former owner and president of the Philadelphia Athletics. He, of course, is the namesake for Scheib Park, which eventually was renamed Connie Mack Stadium. But what a lot of people might not know about Ben, he was a former executive for the A.J. Reach and Company, which was a sporting good manufacturer based out of Philly, and he is credited with the invention of an automated stitching machine, which essentially standardized what the production of baseballs, which kind of evened things out and helped, because at the time they were all different weights, different amounts of stitches and everything, but the use of this machine helped standardize everything, which helped both the offense and defense, pitchers and batters as well. And just a little side note on the A.J. Reach Company, it was eventually sold to Spalding. So up until the 70s, Reach was still used on American League baseballs. It was a branch of the Spalding Corporation. But Ben Scheib, former Athletics owner and president, is today's focus on Throwback Thursday. Also, pretty much helped change the game of baseball by standardizing the production of the balls. And then finally today, we've been turning the page all January, looking at the moments that changed Philly sports forever. And today we're going to go back to 2001, and it was the end of the Eric Lindros era. And that era started off so promising, especially after the trade. Flyers gave up a haul for him, but you expected more, but never got to the promised land. Culminating, I guess, with the 1997 Stanley Cup final loss to the Red Wings. But it was a slow burn after that leading up to this. You had concussions, collapsed lungs, Bonnie and Carl, Bobby Clark. But at the end of the day, the Flyers made a decision that the organization, or as Bobby Clark used to say, the organization is bigger than the players themselves. Stood firm in really not wanting to treat Eric Lindros any different and give him any special treatment because he was a superstar. You kind of see some of that special treatment today, but Bobby Clark, to his credit, dug in his heels. But how did this impact the Flyers? I still think they struggled, and they still are struggling to this day to get back to that level. You had guys like Jeremy Roenick who came in. You had John LeClair for a little bit. You had Claude Giroux, but you never really had that bona fide superstar that they were hoping. Hopefully, that's what Matvei Mishkov is going to become. But they just still have not recovered from that whole debacle. They did make that magical Stanley Cup run, but that was more lightning in a bottle, I think, because they did not sustain the success. But like I said, they're still not there, and maybe the lesson of Bobby Clark versus Eric Lindros is the Flyers today can take, because you hear rumblings now about Mishkov and his work ethic and things like that. Maybe the team now, Danny Briere, Keith Jones, Mishkov, all those guys can take a lesson from this Lindros Bobby Clark thing. And from a fan's perspective, people were split. A lot of people, especially old school Flyer guys, sided with Bobby Clark on this. I tended to side a little bit on the Eric Lindros side. So I will say, from my perspective, Flyers fans were pretty split on this. But Eric Lindros traded away in 2001 to the New York Rangers is today's turn the page event that really changed Philadelphia sports all time. On this day in 2024, the Eagles finally lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, ending what was just a ridiculous collapse and crazy season. Multiple defensive coordinators, questions about the offensive coordinator. I think the only difference between that team and this year's team is the fact that the defense was not a mess this year. 2019 Sixers blow out the Timberwolves, Joe, with 31-13. On this day, John LeClair scored his 100th career goal. Eric Lindros was with his 300th career point as the Flyers beat the Stars 6-1. Wilt Chamberlain helped lead the Sixers to a victory in 1967 against the Celtics to improve to 41-4. But of course, the big story was on this day in 1965, Wilt Chamberlain traded to the Sixers, completely changing the outlook for that team, and they would be in the NBA Finals a couple years later. Be sure to hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line for the answer to today's trivia question. Any thoughts you have on anything Philly sports? We're still kind of in the mourning period, so we'll continue to do this at least for another couple days. But the Eagles this year certainly were not tough, detailed, or together this entire season. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for January 15th, 2026. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go buy some Girl Scout cookies. Have yourselves a Thursday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.